Some new fallout today over bold claims on Iran's nuclear program. For the very first time, a prominent lawmaker admitting that Iran now has the knowledge and capability to produce a nuclear weapon, but claims it will not. Is it credible? Joining me now, Stephen Yates, former Deputy Assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs. Mr. Yates, always good to see you. Do you buy this?
Well, it's a message that I've heard before. I remember in the mid-90s, or in the mid-2000s, we used to have officials who would visit Tehran from other countries and then come to the White House and tell us that we need not worry because Ayatollah Khomeini had declared nuclear weapons to be forbidden under Islamic law, and therefore it's impossible for Iran or any responsible Islamic state to possess them. Needless to say, that was terribly reassuring given that other Islamic countries like, say, Pakistan had in fact developed nuclear weapons.
How would a legislator know?
Well, that's a fair question, and I have deep doubts that a legislator would know. I mean, even in our system, I dare say it's far from a majority of the members of our own Congress who would know the details of our nuclear programs. In a society like Iran's, I find it highly improbable that a legislator would know the details of this kind of a program.
Is our latest round of sanctions working?
Well, I think that we've had dialogue and some form of sanctions for the better part of more than a decade. At some point, we have to recognize that at minimum, the mix is not right. Iran has progressed much, much further in its civil nuclear program. There are multiple intelligence agencies, including elements of our own, that suspect it's not necessarily for peaceful purposes. I think that the situation has grown more dire, regardless of what this legislator has said and regardless of what policymakers who advocate sanctions suggest.
Well, the sanctions are to prevent oil sales to other countries, but they're selling to other countries, aren't they?
They are. In fact, some of the recent sanctions that people have called crippling obviously have not been crippling. And one of the areas where they facilitate sales is other parts of the Middle East. There's some elements where they're still selling oil to other countries, but they're also facilitating, say, Syria in getting out from under international pressure there to sell oil to China.
Right. Is it your sense they just laugh at these so-called sanctions?
Well, I think on one level they take it seriously because when foreign governments declare them guilty of some kind of a violation and they impose sanctions, they consider it sort of a reputational cost. But I don't think they take it seriously in terms of influencing ultimate decisions of national sovereignty, like would they seek the world's ultimate weapons for their own purposes.
Isn't it true that the Ayatollahs have said that nuclear weapons are forbidden?
Yes, there are quotes in many places that say Ayatollah Khomeini has in fact said that the possession of nuclear weapons is strictly forbidden. They say haram in Arabic, and that there's no reason for them to have to possess them. Now, I of course agree with the idea that there's no reason for them to possess them, but there's also really no reason for them to possess a civil nuclear capability, given that they sit on such a bountiful supply of petroleum.
Yeah. I want to get your reaction to the flexibility remark that President Obama made to President Medvedev.
Well, obviously, when a president commits candor in front of what he thought was a closed mic, in some ways it's a deep insight, but really I thought the strategic significance was the implication that he's prepared to sacrifice the security interests of allies who are threatened by Russia in order to try to seek some further strategic objective with what I would consider at best an untrustworthy negotiating partner. If you take that and apply it to the Iran situation, I mean, really our ally Israel would have to be somewhat unsettled about the notion of seeking some kind of a negotiated breakthrough on a nuclear capability or other Iran breakout capability where they face the brunt of that threat.
Let me get a quick answer to this. Do you think that President Obama is, in fact, notwithstanding his words, willing to accept a nuclear weaponized Iran?
Unless his policy and approach changes profoundly, I think we are headed in that direction, and I'd have to say yes.
All right. Stephen Yates, good to see you. Thanks very much.
Good to see you, Greg. Thank you.
Rescue teams in